Welcome to all of you out there in the YouTube world. I hope the ninth week of 2023 was friendly to you and you found a blessing sometime already in the first 3 days of March. I did lots of bread baking on our sunny days this week, and my sourdough has really been improving, especially thanks to Chelsea over at Little Mountain Ranch with the tutorial she gave. It really improved my sourdough a lot. My family thanks her. I will link to Chelsea's video in case you're struggling with sourdough also. I'll try and pin it with the first comment under this video. My husband and I marked off the pool site this week, and hopefully we did a good job squaring it. Remember that a squared plus b squared equals c squared thing you learned in high school? Comes in handy every now and then. But he spread sand over that whole area, so hopefully in the next few weeks we'll be setting that up. I also got to weed eat for the first time in my life this week. I got this gift for Christmas, an electric weed eater. Maybe some of you call it weed whacking. And my husband put it together for me this week. And I went outside and I took care of those weeds that were getting higher than the sides of my raised beds. The grass wasn't high enough yet to pull out the mower, but the weeds were just getting high enough that I could tell they really wanted to drop some seeds into my growing bed. So I had to take care of them. Pea planting day arrived on my calendar and I didn't have my trellises up yet, so I had to get those set up. I used T-posts and 4x8 fencing, and then I attached them together with zip ties. And those trellises will be used again when it's time for me to plant cucumbers. So as the peas are finishing up, then cucumbers will be growing up those trellises. They do so much better when they're growing in the air. You have very much less pressure from the moisture issues that cucumbers get. I also direct seeded carrots and spinach into this corner bed. I only plan to do spinach here, but my winter spinach is growing so nicely that I decided to let the carrots share the space. Also, the bed where I wanted to put my spring carrots wasn't quite ready yet for planting, so that worked out. I also decided to add this to my seed planting on that day because we had 2 days of rain that were coming right afterwards. And I don't have my spigots and water systems hooked back up yet because we're still going to be having freezing nights. So I wanted to take advantage of the natural rain that was coming to water all these seedlings in, and hopefully the ground will stay moist enough. I might just water them with buckets for a couple weeks until I hook up all of my irrigation system. Up next, I went ahead and direct seeded these peas that I saved from 2021. So with the 3 8-foot trellises here, it's 24 linear feet. And I do plant the seeds on both sides of the fence just to make sure I get good coverage or in case a few seeds don't come up. And because our soil is so loose, I just drop the seeds on the ground, I push them down in, and then I scrape the dirt right back over them. These are English peas, so I do want them to become full size and swollen up all the way. They're not grown for like sweet peas, not for the kids to just snap off whatever they want and eat them. And they do say they don't necessarily need trellis, that they can grow on their own, but I just find they're a lot easier to pick because they're neater and more upright when they're on a trellis. And look what I found here while I was planting. I usually find a handful or two anywhere I go in the garden. Beautiful earthworms, some of your best friends in the garden. Keep collecting those coffee grounds from Starbucks, adding alfalfa pellets, whatever you need to have more worm friends in your garden. You will no longer have to buy worm castings if you just have plenty of earthworms in your garden. Now, I did this stretch of peas on March 1st, and then even heavier rain was coming March 3rd, so I ran out at sunrise just before that rain came on March 3rd to plant another pea variety along about 32 linear feet of fencing. I hadn't planned to do it, but I realized I wanted more peas than I had last year, so I better go ahead and plant them all now because spring seems to be the one good season for peas in our area, zone 7A here in Virginia. I may try another fall planting again this year, but last year's results didn't thrill me. I have been tracking what I have planted based on the moon phases. Some things were planted in the wrong phase of the moon, some in the right phase, and some things I planted on fertile days, and some things I planted on killing days. So we shall see how they do. Let's go take a quick peek on what the greenhouse is looking like. Here's what the greenhouse plants look like. It's Friday, March 3rd. The onions, of course, were started in January. These were started on February 20th. Collards, cauliflower, kale, and broccoli. The peas were started February 20th. And I only start those in pots to fill in case I have spots where the stuff that I direct seed is bare. These were also started February 20th. Parsley takes a while to come up. I learned that last year. But there's some lettuce popping up in the back, mullein and spinach. And February 22nd, on a killing day, I believe, I started broccoli, cauliflower, and kale. Cauliflower is always slow to come up. And that same day, I also started the spinach and some more mullein, which hasn't come up yet. So those seedlings are about 9 to 11 days old, and maybe 3 or 4 of those nights I have run the heater in my greenhouse on the lowest setting from midnight to 7 a.m. And that's only if the nights were going below maybe 43 to 45, just to make sure they stayed at a comfortable temperature. Otherwise, they had no heat. The windows and door were open on sunny, warm days. And of course, I'm always keeping the soil moist until the seeds have come up and shown they're established pretty well. Now, what you're looking at now is the section of giant winter spinach. I harvested from this on Thursday, and I froze all of that for future smoothies and meals because I have plenty still in the refrigerator for fresh eating. But if these keep growing for 2 to 3 more weeks this well, this lovely, I will need to dehydrate some of them because my freezers won't be able to take much more. And I've got more new spinach that is going to be planted and coming up. So these don't have to go all the way to the heat. I will let some sections of them go to seed and hopefully try to collect some more spinach seeds, since it looks like the spinach seeds that I collected for the first time are actually coming up pretty well in the greenhouse. That's exciting. I'm not sure if you noticed, but when I started harvesting this spinach, I was using scissors, which is my general rule. And then it got to be where the spinach was just so thick and I didn't want to take forever. I had a place to get to that day that I started using my hands to pinch off the leaves and harvest them. And look what I did. See? I pulled a whole plant out. That's what happens when I don't use scissors. This is the nicest overwintered spinach that I have grown yet. And maybe it's because we've actually had fairly mild weather since the new year. But I am really impressed and thrilled. I laugh every time I come outside and see how big and beautiful the spinach is. I also grabbed some more kale as well to add to the freezer. And I've turned over that surprise section of Russian kale that came up. I've given that over to be harvested and given to the chickens so they can have more fresh stuff each day. The curly kale just has a little bit better flavor than the Russian kale does. That's my homestead report for the 9th week of the year. And I want to leave you with this important message from Pastor Stephen Bohr. And I want to remind you, when it's over, to live joyfully. See you next time.
You know, it might appear that evil is winning. The world is composed mostly of people that are in rebellion against God. But Scripture tells us, prophecy tells us that God in the end will prevail. And that we must gather on His side. Because if we don't, we will be on the losing side.